I hope you all have been enjoying these little short videos we've been doing about snapshots of American history. Today we have one that's not as exciting as some of the others, but something I'd like to share with you. It has to do with someone who's usually associated with our founding fathers by the name of Thomas Paine. Thomas Paine did not sign the Declaration of Independence, the Constitution. He wasn't involved in the debates. But what Thomas Paine was, he was a essayist, a writer, a pamphleteer, and he had an excellent way with words. He was able to use words like Charles Dickens, and he wrote a couple of classics. There was the Common Sense, of course, that was pamphlet and distributed in 1776. And of course, he did a series of pamphlets put together in one now called The American Crisis, which he wrote from 1776 to 1783. And those are great reads. He had a definite way with words. The problem with Mr. Paine is that after the American Revolution, the War of Independence really was settled, the Constitution was signed and put into law, he pretty much found himself out of a job. He had nothing to write about at the time, but as luck would have it for him, there was another revolution that came along called the French Revolution. And initially, many of our founding fathers supported the French until they seen it wasn't quite the same as what we had here. The French brought out this invention they called the guillotine, and they executed their political opponents. A lot of times when you're in the wrong, that's what you do. If you can't argue against someone, you kill them. So many of our founding fathers, initially they supported this, but then they changed their mind. But Thomas Paine, he wrote a book at that time for the French Revolution called The Rights of Man. And it was very popular. Napoleon said he kept it on his bedside table at night. But things began to happen with Thomas Paine, and while he was in France, he ended up in prison. And he thought that somehow George Washington should have come to his rescue. He didn't, although Jefferson and Franklin went and rescued him from prison, brought him home. However, he started trashing George Washington, something awful, thinking somehow it was Washington's fault that he ended up in prison in France. And then he wrote a book called The Age of Reason. And this is the sad part about it. The Age of Reason is basically trashing Christianity and the Bible. He espoused deism, and he thought maybe Benjamin Franklin, who once claimed to be a deist, we have another video on that where Franklin repudiated deism, but he thought others would agree with him on it. And so as he began to attack institutional religion, some of which I would agree with, the priestcraft of the day, and by the way, still continuing on, but for the most part, it was a horrible load of words attacking Christianity, the Bible, and the faith of our founding fathers. And so while I would recommend reading the book, not because I would recommend believing it, as I've read Mein Kampf, and I've learned quite a bit about propaganda and what's going on in today's world because of reading that book. So I would recommend it only because you could understand the thinking of some other people. So he sent the manuscript to Benjamin Franklin, believing that Franklin was going to like it or agree with him on it. And what Franklin said to him, wrote back to him after reading the manuscript, he said, "He that spits against the wind spits in his own face." He said, "I have read your manuscript with some attention. By the argument it contains against a particular providence, though you allow a general providence, you strike at the foundations of all religion. For without the belief of a providence that takes cognizance of guards and guides, it may further particular persons. There is no motive to worship a deity, to fear his displeasure, or to pray for his protection. I will not enter into any discussion of your principles, though you seem to desire it. At present, I shall only give you my opinion, that though your reasonings are subtle and may prevail with some readers, you will not succeed so as to change the general sentiments of mankind on that subject. And the consequence of printing this piece will be a great deal of odium drawn upon yourself, mischief to you, and no benefit to others. He that spits against the wind spits in his own face. So basically what Benjamin Franklin did was he put Thomas Paine in his place. As he showed him not to print this piece, he said, "I would advise you therefore not to attempt unchaining the tiger, but to burn this piece before it is seen by any other person."